They say a Cinderella story ends when the glass slipper fits. But what if Cinderella was sold to the beast instead? Andrea Clarkson scrubs the floors where her father died, poisoned by the very family that now blames her shameful birth for his death. Her cruel stepsister Becky gaslights her into believing she killed both parents, then sells her like livestock to settle a fabricated debt. The buyer? Tao Lin, a supposedly paralyzed Korean mafia boss confined to a wheelchair, rumored to be as ruthless as he is broken. But in his fortress-like penthouse, Andrea discovers something terrifying. The monster treats her like a queen. And when Tao locks the bedroom door and stands up for the first time, revealing predatory strength she never expected, Andrea realizes she wasn't sold as a servant. She was chosen as his weapon and his salvation. Now let me tell you something you may not know about the dark and psychological abuse of gaslighting endured by many people in various relationships worldwide. Gaslighting, the psychological manipulation tactic named after the 1944 film Gaslight, occurs when abusers make victims question their own reality and memories. Studies show that 74% of domestic abuse survivors report experiencing gaslighting, which often leaves deeper psychological scars than physical violence, making Andrea's journey from victim to survivor particularly powerful. And there you have it. Another forbidden romance where survival meets vengeance, and two broken souls forge an empire from their pain. If you're obsessed with anti-heroes who walk again, women who rise from the ashes, and love stories where betrayal fuels revolution, you've found your tribe. Smash that subscribe button because we're diving deeper into the Lynn Clarkson empire, explosive secrets, courtroom showdowns, and the kind of devotion that topples dynasties. Hit that like button and tell me in the comments, what's your vibe right now, and where in the world are you watching from? Are you sneaking this at work with one earbud in, doom scrolling in bed at 2 a.m., or escaping on your commute? Where are my revenge story addicts tuning in from today? I need to know my people. The scrub brush moved in rhythmic circles across the mahogany floor, worn bristles catching in the grain where blood had once pooled. Andrea's knees ached against the hardwood, the same spot where her father had collapsed 6 months ago, clutching his chest, his eyes wide with something that looked less like pain and more like betrayal. You missed a spot. Becky's voice dripped like honey laced with arsenic. Andrea looked up to find her stepsister draped across the velvet settee, fingers glittering with their father's mother's rings, the ones he'd promised to save for Andrea's wedding day. Black silk clung to Becky's curves, mourning clothes that cost more than most people's funerals. I'm sorry, Andrea whispered, scrubbing harder. The ammonia burned her nostrils. Sorry. Becky laughed, bitter and sharp. That's all you've ever been, isn't it? Sorry you were born. Sorry your whore mother seduced daddy and broke his heart. Sorry that when he saw your face, that constant reminder of his shame, it literally killed him. Andrea's hands stilled. The words landed like they always did, burrowing deep into the soft parts of her that still wanted to believe she deserved love. And my mother, Becky continued, standing now, circling like a well-fed cat. She died of grief, you know. Couldn't bear the humiliation of daddy's bastard living under our roof. The doctors said her heart just gave up. I never meant. Intent doesn't matter. Becky crouched down, gripping Andrea's chin with manicured nails. Debt does. And you owe me everything. Your existence cost me both my parents. So when I tell you that you're going to pay, you're going to smile and say yes, Becky. Andrea's throat constricted. What do you mean, pay? Becky's smile could have cut glass. Daddy's medical bills, the funeral costs, my mother's sanitarium before she passed. It all adds up. $2 million to be exact. She pulled a contract from her Hermes bag, black ink on cream paper. Lucky for you, I found a buyer willing to settle the debt. A buyer? The words didn't make sense. People weren't bought. This was America. This was... His name is Tao Lin. Korean. Runs half the underground in Seoul from a wheelchair. Poor darling got shot in the spine during a territorial dispute. He's looking for... Becky's eyes glittered with malice. Companion. Someone to care for him. Feed him. Bathe him. Someone broken enough not to run. Andrea stared at the contract, at the line where her signature would seal her fate. "Sign it, bastard." Becky pressed a pen into her trembling hand. "Or I'll have you arrested for fraud. I'm sure I can find some discrepancies in Daddy's will." The pen hovered over paper. Then, with shaking hands, Andrea signed her name in blood-red ink. The black sedans arrived at dawn, 3 of them lined up like obsidian coffins in the circular driveway. Andrea watched from her attic window as men in dark suits emerged, moving with the predatory efficiency of wolves. No wasted motion. No unnecessary words. One of them looked up, and even from 3 stories high, she felt the weight of his gaze. "They're here for you." Becky appeared in the doorway, holding a garment bag. "Can't have you showing up looking like the help. After all, you're merchandise now. Might as well be pretty merchandise." Inside the bag was a dress, ivory silk that felt like water against Andrea's calloused fingers, with delicate lace at the collar and cuffs. A shroud for the living dead. "Put it on. You have 10 minutes." Andrea dressed in silence, her reflection in the cracked mirror showing a stranger. The dress fit perfectly, clearly custom-made. How long had Becky been planning this? Weeks? Months? Had she been plotting while their father was still alive, counting down the days until she could sell off the unwanted daughter? The thought made Andrea's stomach churn. Downstairs, the lead suit, a man with silver at his temples and a scar bisecting his left eyebrow, stood in the foyer like he owned it. Maybe he did now. Maybe everything Andrea had ever known was already his. "Miss Clarkson." His English was impeccable, barely touched by an accent. "I am Mr. Huang, head of security for the Lin family. Are you prepared to travel?" Travel. As if she had a choice. As if this were a vacation and not a transaction. "She's ready." Becky descended the stairs, pressing a single suitcase into Mr. Huang's hands. "Everything she owns. Not that it's much." Mr. Huang's eyes flickered to Andrea with something that might have been pity. "Mr. Lin requests that Miss Clarkson bring nothing from her previous life. He will provide everything she requires." "How generous," Becky purred. "I'm sure she'll be very grateful." The word hung in the air like a noose. Mr. Huang extended his hand, and Andrea took it, letting him guide her toward the door. She didn't look back at Becky. Didn't say goodbye to the house where she'd grown up, where her father had died, where every floorboard held a memory of being unwanted. The sedan's interior smelled like leather and something darker, gunpowder, maybe, or fear. As they pulled away, Andrea caught one last glimpse of Becky in the rearview mirror, standing on the steps in her widow's blacks, smiling like she'd won. And maybe she had. The flight to Seoul was 14 hours of silence and Mr. Huang's watchful eyes. When they finally landed, rain streaked the windows like tears, and somewhere in the glittering sprawl of the city, a man in a wheelchair was waiting to claim what he'd bought. The penthouse occupied the entire top floor of the Gangnam Tower, a fortress of glass and steel suspended above Seoul's glittering sprawl. Andrea's heels clicked against marble that looked like frozen smoke as Mr. Huang guided her through corridors lined with abstract art that probably cost more than her father's entire estate. "Mr. Lin is waiting in the main room," he said, stopping before double doors carved from black walnut. "A word of advice, Miss Clarkson. He values honesty above all else. Do not lie to him. Do not pity him. And do not run." The last word carried a weight that made Andrea's pulse spike. The doors opened soundlessly. The room beyond was cavernous, floor-to-ceiling windows offering a panoramic view of the city at night. But Andrea barely noticed the view. Her attention locked on the man in the wheelchair positioned before the windows, silhouetted against 10 million lights. "Tao Lin." He turned, and Andrea's breath caught. He was beautiful in the way dangerous things are beautiful. Sharp cheekbones, ink-black hair swept back from a face that could have been carved from marble, and eyes so dark they looked like portals to somewhere lightless and deep. Tattoos crawled up his neck from beneath his collar, serpentine and threatening. His hands rested on the wheelchair's arms with deceptive casualness, long fingers adorned with silver rings that glinted like knives. "Andrea Clarkson." His voice was smoke and whiskey, barely touched by an accent. Welcome to your new home. She stood frozen, unsure whether to bow, curtsy, or run screaming back to the elevator. Come here. Not a request. A command. Her feet moved before her brain caught up, carrying her across the expanse of marble until she stood within arm's reach. This close, she could see the sharp intelligence in his eyes, the way he tracked her every micro-expression like he was reading a language only he understood. You're afraid, he observed. Not a question. Yes. The truth slipped out before she could stop it. Something flickered across his face. Approval, maybe. Good. Fear is honest. He tilted his head, studying her like she was a puzzle he intended to solve. Do you know why I bought you, Andrea?
Bought.
The word still made her flinch. To care for you, she whispered, echoing Becky's cruel words. Tao's laugh was low and dark. Your stepsister sold you a fairy tale wrapped in a contract. But I'll give you the truth. I didn't choose you because you were for sale. I chose you because you're a survivor. His eyes held hers, refusing to let her look away. I've been watching you for months. Every report Mr. Huang sent. Every photograph. Every record of how your stepsister degraded you, and yet you never broke. Never ran. Never begged. Andrea's heart hammered against her ribs. You were watching me? Yes. No apology in the word. And what I saw was a woman strong enough to survive what's coming. Strong enough to stand beside a king. He gestured to the sprawling penthouse, the city beyond. This is my vault, Andrea. My fortress. And you, his smile was predatory, are going to help me burn down everyone who thinks they can touch what's mine. She should have been terrified. Instead, for the first time in months, she felt something dangerous bloom in her chest. Hope. Smash that subscribe button and let us know in the comments who you are rooting for. Your support keeps these epic tales coming, so subscribe and join our community of today. 3 weeks in the penthouse, and Andrea still couldn't shake the feeling she was living in a gilded cage. Tao's staff moved like ghosts, there when needed, invisible when not, and the penthouse itself seemed to breathe with a quiet menace that never let her forget where she was. Who owned her? You're tense. Tao's voice cut through her thoughts. He sat in his wheelchair near the windows, morning light painting him in shades of gold and shadow. Come here. It was always the same command. Come here. As if proximity to him was as natural as breathing. Andrea crossed the room, setting down the breakfast tray she'd insisted on preparing herself. The staff had looked at her like she'd committed blasphemy, but Tao had simply smiled that dangerous smile and dismissed them. I'm fine, she lied. You're a terrible liar. He caught her wrist as she turned to leave, his grip gentle but inescapable. Sit. She perched on the ottoman beside his chair, acutely aware of how close they were. This close, she could smell his cologne, something expensive and dark, cedar and smoke. Tell me about your father, he said quietly. The request stole the air from her lungs. Why? Because you carry his ghost like a weight around your neck. And I need to understand what haunts you. Andrea's hands twisted in her lap. No one had asked about her father. Not since he died. Becky had forbidden his name in the house, as if speaking it would summon his disappointed spirit. He was good, she whispered. At least I thought he was. He used to read me stories when I was small, before Becky's mother came. Before everything changed. Her voice cracked. But maybe Becky was right. Maybe seeing me every day, the proof of his affair. Maybe it did break his heart. Maybe I killed him just by existing. Stop. Tao's command was soft but absolute. He wheeled closer, forcing her to meet his eyes. You didn't kill anyone, Andrea. But someone did. She blinked, confused. What? Your father's autopsy report. I acquired it. His thumb traced circles on her wrist, an oddly tender gesture. There were inconsistencies. Elevated levels of arsenic in his system. Not enough to be obvious, but enough to cause cardiac arrest over time. The world tilted. Arsenic? But that means... Someone poisoned him. Slowly. Methodically. Tao's eyes glittered with something feral. And they let you believe you were the cause. Tears burned behind Andrea's eyes, hot and angry. Becky. It had to be Becky. Perhaps. Or perhaps she had help. He released her wrist, but his gaze held her captive. That's what we're going to find out. Together. Why? The question burst out. Why do you care? I'm just. Just what? Property. His smile was sharp enough to cut. You're not property, Andrea. You're my partner. My equal. And anyone who tried to destroy you has made an enemy of me. Something in her chest cracked open, years of self-loathing bleeding out through the fissure. I don't understand you, she whispered. Tao leaned back, studying her with those fathomless eyes. You will. In time. He gestured to the breakfast tray. Now feed me. My arms are tired today. It was a lie. She could see the strength in his shoulders, the controlled power in every movement, but she understood the real request. Trust me. Stay close. Let me protect you. So she picked up the toast, brought it to his lips, and watched him bite down with a smile that promised violence to anyone who'd ever made her feel small. And for the first time since her father's death, Andrea felt something other than shame. She felt fury. The nightmare came like it always did, her father's body on the mahogany floor, Becky's voice whispering, you killed him, you killed him, you killed him, until the words became her heartbeat. Andrea woke gasping, sheets twisted around her legs like restraints. A sound cut through the darkness. Footsteps. Her door was opening. She sat up, heart hammering, as a silhouette filled the doorway. Tall. Broad-shouldered. Moving with a predator's grace toward her bed. Tao. His name came out strangled. The lamp clicked on, and there he stood. No wheelchair, no weakness, just raw masculine power clothed in black silk pajama pants and nothing else. Tattoos covered his torso, dragons and demons writhing across golden skin, and his eyes burned with something that made her breath stop. You were screaming. His voice was rough, intimate in the darkness. You're standing. The words came out accusatory, confused. He moved closer, and she scrambled backward until her spine hit the headboard. Not from fear, from the sudden, overwhelming awareness that she was wearing only a thin nightgown, and he was looking at her like she was something precious and breakable and his. I've always been able to stand, Andrea. He sat on the edge of her bed, the mattress dipping under his weight. The wheelchair was theater. A trap for rats who think a crippled king is easy prey. You lied. Betrayal flooded her system, hot and acidic. I performed. His hand caught her chin, forcing her to meet his gaze. For 2 years, I've sat in that chair watching my empire, waiting for the traitors to reveal themselves, waiting for the people who put a bullet in my father's spine to think they could do the same to me. Your father was paralyzed by the same people who poisoned yours. His thumb traced her lower lip, and she shivered. We're more alike than little dove. Both of us sold lies about our parents' deaths. Both of us used as pawns in someone else's game. The tenderness in his touch warred with the violence in his words. Why tell me now? She whispered. Because tonight, you're going to make a choice. He leaned closer, close enough that she could feel his breath on her lips. You can leave. I'll have Mr. Huang take you anywhere in the world, set you up with enough money to disappear. Your contract void. Your debt erased. Hope and terror tangled in her chest. Or you stay. You become my queen in truth, not just in name. You help me hunt down everyone who poisoned your father, who tormented you, who sold you like cattle. His eyes glittered like black diamonds. You stop being a victim and become a weapon. My weapon. My partner. The deadbolt on her door clicked shut. Not a prison. An invitation. If I stay, Andrea heard herself say, I want to watch her burn. Becky. I want to watch her lose everything like she made me lose everything. Tao's smile was beautiful and terrible. There's my queen. He stood, towering over her, power radiating from every line of his body. Then he did something that shattered her completely. He knelt beside the bed, took her trembling hand, and pressed a kiss to her knuckles that felt like a vow. Welcome to the war, Andrea Clarkson. Now, let's go collect some debts. If you have been enjoying this story so far, kindly subscribe and hit the notification bell to ensure you're part of the inner circle for every new release. The screen might go black, but the legend continues. Don't miss the next epic story. The war room was hidden behind a false wall in Tao's office, accessible only by fingerprint and retinal scan. When the steel door hissed open, Andrea stepped into a space that looked like a serial killer's fever dream. Walls covered in photographs, documents, string-connecting faces, and locations in a web of conspiracy that made her head spin. But it was the center wall that stole her breath. Her father's face. Dozens of photos. And beside him, another man with Tao's eyes and sharper features. Your father, she whispered. Jean Ho Lin. Murdered 3 years ago. Tao moved past her, his gait fluid and powerful now that the pretense was gone. Official cause of death, stroke. Actual cause, a neurotoxin slipped into his evening whiskey by someone who had access to his private study. He pulled up a holographic display, financial records flooding the air in streams of glowing data. After my father died, I inherited everything, the legitimate businesses, the underground operations, the debts owed, and the debts were owed. But someone's been bleeding my accounts. His finger traced a pattern in the data. Small transfers. 5,000 here, 10,000 there, routed through shell companies and offshore accounts. Over 3 years, they've siphoned nearly $2 million. Andrea's blood ran cold. $2 million. The same amount Becky claimed I owed. Exactly. Tao pulled up another screen. Bank records with Becky's name emblazoned across the top. Your stepsister has been receiving monthly payments of $50,000 from an account registered to a medical facility in the countryside, the Willowbrook Sanitarium. But that's where Becky said her mother was treated before she died. Did you ever see the body? Tao's question was gentle but devastating. Andrea's legs went weak. No. Becky said it was a closed casket, that her mother had wasted away, that it would be too painful for me to see. The words caught in her throat. Oh, God. She's alive. Becky's mother is alive. Tao caught her before she could collapse, strong arms wrapping around her waist. And she's been living like a queen on my money. Money your stepsister has been stealing using your father's death and your guilt as cover. Rage ignited in Andrea's chest, hot and clean. The debt was fake. All of it. The medical bills were real, just not your father's. They were paying for her mother's luxury accommodations. He turned her in his arms, his face inches from hers. They poisoned both our fathers, Andrea. Killed them and profited from their deaths. And they used you, your shame, your guilt, to fund their escape. How long have you known? I started suspecting when your stepsister contacted my broker. No one sells a family member for $2 million in debt unless they're desperate or calculating. His hand cupped her face. So I investigated. Found the poison in your father's system. Tracked the money. Discovered that the timing of his death and my father's lined up too perfectly to be coincidence. They're working together. The pieces clicked into place. Becky's mother and whoever killed your father. And now we have the paper trail to prove it. Tao smiled, dark and satisfied. Tomorrow, we visit Willowbrook. Time to meet the ghost. The stylist arrived at dawn with a team of 6, transforming Tao's penthouse into a battlefield of haute couture and calculated transformation. Andrea stood in front of the 3-way mirror in nothing but silk undergarments, feeling exposed and uncertain as strangers circled her like sharks. She needs to look untouchable, Tao commanded from his position by the window. He'd returned to the wheelchair for appearances. Mr. Huang had insisted the staff still believe the ruse. Like a queen who could burn down empires with a glance. The head stylist, a severe woman named Minji, tilted Andrea's chin upward. Good bone structure. Haunted eyes. We can work with haunted. She snapped her fingers, and the team descended. 3 hours later, Andrea didn't recognize her own reflection. The dress was black Valentino, structured like armor with a neckline that plunged just enough to be dangerous. Her natural curls had been tamed into sleek waves that cascaded down her back like dark water. The makeup artist had done something devastating with her eyes, smoky and feline, transforming her from victim to predator. But it was the jewelry that stole her breath. Tao wheeled forward, a velvet box balanced on his lap. Inside lay a diamond necklace that could fund a small country, teardrop stones arranged in a pattern that looked like falling stars, with a centerpiece ruby the color of fresh blood. "This belonged to my mother," he said quietly, lifting it from the box. "She wore it the night she told my father's enemies to go to hell in 3 languages." Andrea's hands trembled as he fastened it around her throat. The weight of it felt like a crown. "Look at yourself," Tao commanded.
She did.
And saw a stranger, powerful, beautiful, dangerous. Someone Becky wouldn't recognize. Someone who could walk into that sanitarium and demand answers. "Better," Minji approved. "Now the final touch." She handed Andrea a small platinum card. Andrea turned it over, reading the embossed text, Andrea Lin, Chief Operating Officer. Lin International. Lin. The name felt foreign on her tongue. "We were married yesterday," Tao said casually, producing a marriage certificate. "Civil ceremony. Very private. Mr. Huang and his wife witnessed. Legally binding in both Korea and the United States." The room spun. "You married me? Without asking? I claimed you." His eyes held no apology. "Every asset, every protection, every weapon I possess is now yours." And in return, he pulled a Glock from beneath his blanket, checked the chamber with practiced efficiency, and held it out to her. "You learn to protect what's yours." Andrea stared at the gun, at her reflection, at the man who'd just rewritten her entire existence without permission. She should have been furious. Instead, she took the gun, felt its weight settle in her palm like it belonged there.
"Teach me," she said.
Tao's smile could have lit cities on fire. "Mr. Huang, clear the shooting range. My wife needs to learn how to kill." The word wife should have terrified her. Instead, it felt like the first true thing she'd ever been called. That afternoon, Andrea Lin, put 15 rounds through a target's center mass and didn't flinch once. By evening, she was ready to meet the ghost. And by midnight, she'd make sure that Ghost learned what happened to people who tried to bury her. Willowbrook Sanitarium sprawled across 10 acres of manicured countryside like a 5-star resort masquerading as a medical facility. Andrea watched it approach through the tinted windows of Tao's Maybach, her new wedding ring catching the late afternoon light. "Remember," Tao said, now standing tall in the back of the car, fastening his cufflinks with predatory precision, "we're here for answers, not revenge. Not yet. And if she runs?" His smile was sharp enough to cut. "Mr. Huang has the building surrounded. The only place she's running is into handcuffs." They exited the vehicle like royalty, Tao in a charcoal Tom Ford suit that made him look like death in Italian wool, Andrea in her black armor and blood-red diamonds. The receptionist's smile faltered when she saw them. "We're here to see Eleanor Hartwell," Tao announced. "Room 308. "I'm sorry, Mrs. Hartwell doesn't accept visitors without." Tao placed a briefcase on the desk and opened it. It was filled with cash. American hundreds, stacked neatly. "She'll accept us." The receptionist's professionalism crumbled. "3rd floor. East wing." I'll just notify security your expected guests." "You do that." The elevator ride felt like descending into hell. Andrea's heart hammered against her ribs, the Glock holstered beneath her jacket a cold comfort against her side. Room 308 was at the end of a hallway lined with abstract art and the faint smell of jasmine. Tao didn't knock, he simply opened the door like he owned it. And there, lounging on a chaise by floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a private garden, was Eleanor Hartwell.
Alive. Healthy.
Draped in Chanel and drinking champagne, like she was on vacation. She looked up, and her face went white as bone. "Hello, Mother." The word tasted like poison on Andrea's tongue. The champagne flute shattered against the marble floor. Eleanor recovered quickly, too quickly, a woman used to talking her way out of corners. "Andrea. What a surprise. I thought Becky said you'd gone abroad to Korea. To be sold to a Mafia boss to pay your medical bills." Andrea stepped forward, and Eleanor shrank back. Except you're not sick, are you? You're not dead. You've been hiding here, living off blood money, while your daughter convinced me I killed you both. I don't know what you're talking about. Tao moved with liquid grace, producing a folder that he tossed onto Eleanor's lap. Bank statements. Transfer records. Autopsy reports showing arsenic poisoning in Richard Clarkson's system. And security footage from the estate showing you in the kitchen the night before he collapsed. Eleanor's mask cracked. That footage doesn't exist. I made sure. You made sure the estate's security system was deleted. But you forgot about the neighbor's camera that catches your driveway. Tao's smile was a predator's. Technology. So inconvenient for murderers. I didn't kill Richard. Eleanor's composure shattered completely. That was never the plan. We were just supposed to make him sick enough to be dependent, to need me, to change his will. We. Andrea's voice was ice. Who's we? Eleanor's eyes darted toward the door, calculating. If I tell you, what do I get? You get to live, Tao said simply. My father was murdered by the same people who helped you. Give me names, and I'll make sure your prison sentence is comfortable. Refuse. He pulled his own gun, set it on the table between them, and Mr. Huang disposes of your body where no one will ever find it. The room held its breath. Eleanor crumpled, tears streaming mascara down her cheeks. It was supposed to be simple. Becky met someone at a charity gala, a businessman with connections. He said he could help us access Richard's fortune if we just removed obstacles. He provided the arsenic, the plan, everything. A name, Andrea demanded. Park Jiwoo. He said he was helping us, but really he was using us to get to you. Eleanor looked at Tao with dawning horror. He knew you'd investigate Richard's death. Knew you'd buy Andrea. He wanted her close to you. Tao's expression went deadly calm. Park Jiwoo is my chief financial officer. The pieces clicked into place with sickening clarity. The traitor had been inside Tao's organization all along, using Becky and Eleanor as pawns, poisoning both fathers, and setting up Andrea as the perfect weapon to get close to Tao, or the perfect scapegoat when he finally made his move. When's his next move? Tao's voice was silk over razors. The charity gala. Tomorrow night. Eleanor was sobbing now. He's going to frame Andrea for Richard's murder publicly, discredit you, and seize your assets while the board removes you. Andrea looked at Tao, saw the cold calculation in his eyes. Then tomorrow night, he said quietly, we give him a show he'll never forget. If you have been enjoying this story so far, kindly subscribe and hit the notification bell to ensure you're part of the inner circle for every new release. The screen might go black, but the legend continues. Don't miss the next epic story. The Seoul Grand Ballroom glittered like a dragon's hoard. Crystal chandeliers casting prismatic light across champagne fountains and Korea's elite draped in couture and calculated smiles. Andrea descended the marble staircase on Tao's arm, every eye in the room tracking their entrance. Tao had returned to his wheelchair for the performance, playing the role of weakened king one final time. But Andrea could feel the coiled power in his body, the predator waiting beneath the mask of civility. There, Tao murmured, nodding toward a silver-haired man in an impeccable tuxedo holding court near the bar. Park Jiwoo. He looked like someone's beloved grandfather, all warm smiles and gentle eyes. A wolf in grandfather's clothing. I want to hurt him, Andrea whispered. You will. But first, we let him make his move. Tao's hand squeezed hers. Mr. Huang has positioned our people at every exit. The police are waiting outside. And the media, he gestured to the cameras positioned strategically around the room, will broadcast everything. They'd barely made it halfway across the ballroom when Park approached, flanked by two board members Andrea recognized from the intelligence Tao had shown her. Vultures, all of them. Tao. Mrs. Lin. Park's smile was oil slick smooth. How wonderful to see you both. Though I must say, Tao, you're looking rather diminished lately. Perhaps the stress of recent irregularities. Irregularities. Tao's voice was mild, but Andrea felt him tense. The missing funds. The unauthorized transfers. Park's voice carried, drawing a crowd. I hate to bring business to a social event, but the board has concerns. concerns about your leadership, your judgment. His eyes slid to Andrea, venomous. Particularly your decision to marry a woman currently under investigation for her father's murder. The crowd gasped. Phones appeared, cameras focusing. Investigation. Andrea kept her voice steady despite her racing heart. I don't know what you're talking about. Don't you? Park produced a folder, held it aloft like a prosecution exhibit. Evidence that you poisoned Richard Clarkson to access his estate. That you seduced Tao to hide from American authorities. That you've been embezzling from Lynn International to fund your escape. The room erupted in whispers. Board members circled like sharks scenting blood. This was it. The trap Park had spent years constructing. Those are serious accusations, Tao said quietly. Too quietly. Which is why I've taken the liberty of inviting the authorities. Park gestured, and police officers materialized at the ballroom entrance. Mrs. Lin will be extradited to face justice. And you, Tao, his smile turned cruel, will step down for gross negligence, effective immediately. The board members moved closer, smelling victory. Andrea's hand drifted toward the gun beneath her gown, but Tao caught her wrist. Squeezed once.
Wait.
You're right about one thing, Tao said, his voice carrying across the silent ballroom. There has been embezzlement, murder, betrayal at the highest levels. He stood up. The crowd's shock was a physical thing, gasps and shouts as Tao rose from his wheelchair with fluid, predatory grace. 2 years of deception shattered in a single movement. But you're wrong about who's guilty. Tao pulled a remote from his pocket, clicked it, and the ballroom's massive screens blazed to life. Security footage. Eleanor in the Clarkson kitchen, measuring powder into a glass. Bank transfers linking Park to offshore accounts. Recorded phone calls where Park coordinated both murders. And the centerpiece. Footage from Willowbrook of Eleanor's full confession, implicating Park as the architect of everything. Park Ji-woo. Tao's voice was thunder. You murdered my father. You murdered Richard Clarkson. You've stolen millions from my organization and attempted to frame my wife for your crimes. Park's face drained of color. He lunged for the exit, but Mr. Huang materialized from the crowd, catching him by the collar. The police are here, Tao continued, gesturing to the officers who now moved toward Park instead of Andrea. But not for my wife. For you. The cameras captured everything. Park's desperate struggles, his screamed denials, the board members scrambling to distance themselves from the falling king. Andrea watched it all with savage satisfaction, Tao's hand firm in hers. One more thing, Tao said, pulling Andrea forward. The crowd parted like water. At the ballroom's entrance stood Becky, dressed in designer black, clearly expecting to witness her stepsister's arrest. Instead, she watched police officers approach her with handcuffs. Becky Hartwell, the lead officer, announced, "You're under arrest for conspiracy to commit murder, fraud, and embezzlement." Becky's eyes found Andrea's across the ballroom. The recognition hit. Her broken stepsister was alive, powerful, and victorious. The bastard daughter had become a queen. "No," Becky whispered. "No, this isn't." "Yes," Andrea said, her voice carrying in the stunned silence. "This is exactly what you deserve. You sold me to pay for your mother's crimes. You made me believe I was worthless, shameful, guilty." She smiled, cold and beautiful. "But I'm not the bastard daughter anymore. I'm Andrea Lynn, and I just watched your entire world burn." The cameras captured Becky's collapse, her screams, her complete destruction. Tao pulled Andrea close, pressed a kiss to her temple that felt like a coronation. "Welcome to your kingdom, my queen," he murmured. "Now let's go home and rule it." 3 months later, Andrea stood in the foyer of the Clarkson estate, her estate now seized from Becky's criminal holdings and returned to its rightful heir. Morning light streamed through windows she'd once cleaned on her knees, casting gold across the mahogany floors where her father had died. But the floors had been refinished. The poison scrubbed away. Still haunted. Tao's voice came from behind her, arms wrapping around her waist as he pulled her against his chest. "No," Andrea said, and meant it. "Ghosts only have power if you believe in them." And I stopped believing in mine the night you stood up in that ballroom. The trial had been swift and brutal. Park Ji-woo received life in prison for double murder and racketeering. Eleanor took a plea deal, 20 years in exchange for her testimony. And Becky, beautiful, cruel Becky, had been sentenced to 30 years for conspiracy and attempted murder. Andrea had attended every day of the proceedings, dressed in power suits and her mother-in-law's diamonds, watching her tormentors face justice. She'd felt nothing but cold satisfaction. The contractors finished the West Wing, Tao said, turning her in his arms. We could move in next month if you want. Split our time between Seoul and here. And run both empires. Andrea smiled, still getting used to the idea that she was a power broker now, co-CEO of Lin International with her name on legal documents that moved millions. Both empires, Tao agreed. He cupped her face, his touch infinitely gentle despite the violence those hands were capable of. Any regrets? She thought about the girl she'd been, broken, guilt-ridden, on her knees scrubbing floors. Thought about the woman she'd become, sharp, ruthless, capable of staring down boardrooms and making grown men flinch. Only one, she admitted. I wish I could tell my father the truth. That I didn't kill him. That I survived. That I won. He knows. Tao pressed his forehead to hers. Wherever he is, he knows his daughter became a queen. A knock at the door interrupted them. Mr. Huang entered, tablet in hand. The acquisition papers for the Hartwell assets just cleared. Everything Becky's mother owned now belongs to Lin International.
He paused.
There's also a letter. It arrived this morning from the Women's Correctional Facility. Andrea's stomach clenched. From Becky. Yes, ma'am. She took the envelope, felt its weight. Tao's hand settled on her lower back, a silent reminder that whatever poison the letter contained, she didn't face it alone. Inside was a single page, Becky's perfect handwriting now jagged and desperate. You won. I understand that now. But answer me one thing. Do you feel powerful? Or do you just feel like what you've always been? A bastard pretending to be something she's not? Andrea read it twice, waiting for the old shame to surface. The doubt. The voice that whispered she didn't deserve any of this. It never came. Instead, she walked to the fireplace, touched the letter to the flames, and watched it burn. What did it say? Tao asked. Nothing that matters. She turned back to him, to the empire they'd built from blood and vengeance, to the future spreading before them like conquered territory. She asked if I feel powerful. And Andrea smiled, the expression sharp and satisfied, and entirely her own. I told her the truth. I don't feel powerful. She pulled Tao close, kissed him with the confidence of a woman who'd stared into the abyss and made it blink. I am powerful. And that's the difference between queens and pretenders. Outside, Seoul glittered in the distance, its lights a reminder of the kingdom they ruled together. Inside, the Clarkson estate stood ready to be transformed from a monument to pain into a symbol of resurrection. Andrea Clarkson had died the night she signed that contract in blood. Andrea Lin had risen from her ashes, crowned in diamonds and vengeance, ready to burn down anyone foolish enough to call her weak. And in Tao's arms, surrounded by the ruins of her enemies and the promise of her future, she finally understood what her father had tried to teach her all those years ago. The strongest steel is forged in the hottest fire. And she had burned bright enough to consume the world. If you have enjoyed this story so far, kindly subscribe and hit the notification bell to ensure you're part of the inner circle for every new release. Tell me your favorite part of the story and why you think it's the best. I'd be in the comments section watching and replying to all your messages.